customs. Let's begin with that. In health sector, cancer medication, hugely important for people. If you can elaborate on the manner in which people are going to benefit from these tax breaks.
Yeah, if you see the changes which have been brought on customs duty rates, you will see a pattern, and the rates have been rigid to promote or give the impetus to the domestic manufacturing, strengthening supply chains and creating diversity in the supply chains, as well as for encouraging and giving incentive to the export sector. In addition to that, there was
reduction in gold seems like you're trying to redistribute, get people to redistribute their asset allocation.
We will go to the gold also, but let me explain the changes which have been brought on customs duty front. So, the underlying reasons to look into these budget proposals is that we want to give impetus to domestic manufacturing, boost the exports and provide diversity to the supply chains. So, that is again very important. In addition to that, we were noticing that there were certain commodities on which there were upsurge in imports, and the imports were coming at hugely cheap rates. Maybe the exporters in those countries were having some natural advantages, because the raw material, maybe say natural gas, was available in those countries at much lesser rate as compared to India. So, in those cases certain corrections have been provided. In addition to that, there were certain items on which there was duty inversion that has also been corrected. To elaborate it further, I would like to say that there are certain critical minerals which are not mined in India, and India was totally dependent on import of such minerals. So, there the rate of duty was 2.55 or 7.5%. So, there the duty has been brought down to nil, because these critical minerals are now being imported at nil rate for further processing, and these are further used in the sectors like electronics or maybe in renewable energy or defense or space sector.
Batteries, yes.
So it is very important
Just to give a context, so there's semiconductors, there is this EV ecosystem which is coming up for lithium, which is very crucial.
Lithium and space as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are the materials which are required by the country for providing in the supply chain, so that India can do the manufacturing and do the value addition within the country. In addition to that, there are items where the supply chain has been strengthened by providing a diversity, because there are certain items which are covered under free trade agreements, and those were already being brought at nil rate or at very nominal rate. So, there to create diversity in the supply chain, and maybe because of the geopolitical situations also, so there the rate of duties have been reduced or brought to nil. In addition to that, to give boost to the exporting sector, like in case of say frozen shrimp, there is lot of exports from India. So, in that the feed, shrimp feed, so there the rate of duty has been brought down from 15% to 5%, and the inputs which are going into producing that feed, so there the duty rates have been brought down to nil. And giving an example of correction of duty inversion, I would like to mention about MDI, which is a raw material which is not manufactured in the country. India was completely dependent on that for further manufacturing, that is used in manufacture of spandex yarn. On spandex yarn, the rate of duty was 5%, whereas on MDI it was 7.5%. So, that has now been rationalized and brought down to 5%. In addition to that, I would, there are items like mobile phones.
Yes.
And PCBA, which is used in mobile phones and mobile chargers. The rate of duty has been brought down from 20% to 15%. And in fact, mobile manufacture of mobile phone, that is one sector which is a huge success story of the PMP program of Government of India. And under that program, the duty rates were increased to 20% in 2020. But after that, there is a lot of deepening in the value chain, and now the PCBAs, which is adding to, which is accounting for something like 55% of the value of the mobile phone, those are now being manufactured in India. So, that is the way the value chain has now deepened. Now, it is not that India is just assembling the mobile phones, and in fact, in last year the production of mobile phone, domestic production, is to the tune of rupees 4.1 lakh crores, and the exports have also jumped. It reached to the level of 1.2 lakh crores. So that is there, and you mentioned about the gold also.
Yes.
Now coming to the gold.
So on the mobile front, I just wanted to add, because it is something, a gadget that everyone uses of a different make, given that the import customs are going to be reduced in the components of mobile phones, will it also have some sort of a cascading impact on the prices of mobile phones in the days ahead? Does that possibility exist? Many viewers would be interested in knowing.
Yeah, so the mobile phones, now the rate of duty has been reduced from 20% to 15%. The models which are not manufactured in India will be available at cheaper rates. And now the industry manufacturing sector has taken firm roots in the country. So there is a need to provide or to bring down the duty levels to the normal level, because the rates were increased under the PMP program to boost the manufacturing sector. And now we have to create the competitiveness for the industry so that they can be very competitive in export market, and which is already happening.
Right.
So that is on the mobile front.
You were telling us about the precious metals as well.
On the precious metals, I would like to mention that on gold, the import duty, basic custom duty was at the rate of 15%, which has been brought down to 6%. And in fact, the last time when the rate of duty on gold was increased was in July 2022. At that time, because of the geopolitical situation, there were worsening current account deficit mainly on count of increase in crude oil, petroleum crude oil, that reached to the level of $120 per barrel. That was leading to worsening of, so CAD, and therefore the government thought that non-essential imports that have to be curbed and curtailed by raising the rate of duty. In fact, that resulted into reduction in the volumes of gold import in the country, and in the financial year 2022-23, the CAD reached to the level of 2% of the GDP, which came down to 0.7% in next financial year, that is in financial year 2022-23, in fact 23-24, and in fact in the last quarter of the last financial year it was in surplus. So the position on CAD front is, and in fact I would also like to mention that when the rate of duty was increased on gold, we noticed there was a tendency to bring the gold not always in bullion form but in other forms like in jewelry form under certain free trade agreements at nil rate, and that was a kind of subterfuge used for bringing the gold at concessional rate or at nil rate. That was also resulting into that country was not gaining commensurate to the rise in the customs duty, and there was increase in we noticed that there was increase in gold smuggling, and in fact last year customs authorities have seized something like 4.8 tons of gold. So all these factors weighed in, and in fact the biggest factor is that gems and jewelry consumes lot of gold for manufacturing of jewelry which are exported, and they provide lot of employment also. The employment provided by gems and jewelry sector is to the tune of 50 lakh people are getting the employment in that sector, and the exports from that sector is again accounting for 8% of India's exports. So that sector is very important for providing employment.
Where we value add to the raw material of these precious metals.
So precisely for that, for them, the now material will be available at cheaper rate, gold. So all these factors weighed in for taking a decision to bring down the rate of duty on gold from 15% to 6%.
And India is known as a processing plant for precious metals, and I think it would get a further boost. Mr. Ravi Agarwal, startups we understand are important engines